Hey, welcome back to the Break the Cycle Podcast. Today we're talking about the black sheep. We have our new co-host, Tessa. She's coming in to fill in for Kyla. So we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive with her multicultural background and some interesting experiences that Danny and I don't have because we have penises. Outside of that, we do a deep dive into what it means to be a black sheep. The definition, whether it's nurture versus nature. We go into just like how we experienced being black sheeps in various ways throughout our own life. We also talk a little bit about just what animals resemble our mental health. So buckle up, grab a sheepskin blanket or just a blanket or anything and listen in.
Hey.
Hi.
Who's that new voice?
It's me. That voice in your head. I'm just kidding.
Kyla has been running with us for the past few episodes, and she unfortunately is out. So we have Tessa, who's come in as a little replacement for the next few episodes.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Yay, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Little substitute.
Yeah.
It's like
Substitute
the
teacher.
sixth man on the basketball team.
Yeah.
But she's deadly. She's a threat. It's like James Harden.
Ooh.
Yeah.
She's gonna
I like that.
swish some threes.
Yeah, sometimes a good substitute is great. Like when you were growing up in school and you had substitute teachers, would they like really like screw with them? Or were your classes like nice to the substitute teachers?
It depends. I feel like if the substitutes were like young and chill, then we would vibe with them, you know? But if they were like kind of like mean and like standoffish, then we would give them a headache.
Okay.
Yeah. Depending on what energy they projected into the classroom, you know?
They exuded.
Or how much work they have you doing.
Yeah.
Like we love watching a movie when there's a sub, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like how serious the sub takes the job.
Mm-hmm.
Because like imagine you rolling up and being like, all right, listen, the teacher gave us this, but all we got to do is just like vibe out. Like, how y'all doing today?
Yeah.
You know?
But also you may have a teacher that's like, hey, the next day we're, going to go in and like, how can you disrespect me through the sub, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I'd vibe out with the kids. I'm looking for approval, please.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tessa, you have a background in mental health / health and wellness. We met you at Holistic Health or Health Clinic?
Studio. What would you call their body?
It's like a tech wellness space with a lot of different modalities, recovery modalities.
Like
so
what?
yeah.
What do they have there?
They have cryotherapy. They have red light therapy. I don't know. Are we sponsored? Do we?
Not yet.
Go?
We're accepting
Give them a
sponsors.
little plug.
We're open to taking sponsors.
Yeah, I mean, that's how we met, so might as well plug them up. So
Yeah,
how
I
long
met
were
you guys
there
during
for?
cryo. Actually, you
Yeah.
both would come in all the time for cryotherapy.
Yeah.
It was lit. You know.
Big cryo people for a short period of time.
Yeah.
A few months.
We did a hyperbaric oxygen chamber too.
You love the hyperbaric oxygen.
Yeah, I did.
What's the hyperbaric oxygen?
It pretty much like, I think it doubles the like atmospheric oxygen levels. So like pretty much when you're at sea level, it's like 1 atmosphere, right? And then in the oxygen chamber, they like double it. So it's like double the oxygen. And it's supposed to really help promote healing like internally inside of your body. So I would like just do stunts and like get injured sometimes. I remember one day I was like, I did a backflip on cement.
We were out at a Hayden James concert.
Hayden James. Yeah.
Dyslexia.
And I tried doing a backflip on cement and I landed on my knee. And I
remember
thought it was like broken. It was like really swollen. And then I was like, I don't have health insurance. I'm going to just go to Therabody and hit the hyperbaric oxygen. So
I remember
did that.
the next morning, we roll up to the front desk and they're like,
We were a little nervy. We were like,
Yeah, I was like,
he's like,
still,
I may or
like-
may not have broken my knee, but I
was
think
like-
hyperbaric's going to help it.
I was
And the
like
front
still
desk-
under the influence.
Yeah.
And
I literally have a picture of you with like peas on your and I'm like, brother, I don't think that's gonna help. And he's like, oxygen will help it.
and then I
I'm
went like 4
okay.
days straight and like it just got better.
Yeah, a lot of people would come in after like dental surgeries or like I remember a woman went in after like some plastic surgery and she said her doctor was like, this is the fastest I've ever seen anyone heal.
Wow.
LeBron James uses it. So I think that it is, gaining popularity
Yeah,
for
there's
sure.
validity to it for sure.
Yeah.
Even in the mental health space, like hyperbaric and red light. Red light was really big for like even seasonal affective disorder. Like I see on TikTok all the time the little lights for the eyes. I don't know if you guys have seen that. It's all over TikTok right now. But red light also helps with like seasonal depression as well. But it's also really good for like skin, nails, hair, all that good stuff.
Yeah. And then they would do like massages there as well. I really loved that spot.
Yeah,
it was
great.
cool. It was like right when we were starting Cycle 2, and we were trying to figure out how those treatments kind of like intermingle with mental health.
Yeah, we were really like interested in all of the modalities outside of the medicine cabinet and in helping people with depression, anxiety, like PTSD, whatever. And we were like, all right, let's look at like TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation, or like ketamine therapy,
Or like heat and cold,
hot therapy, cold therapy, and that's what
compression. There's so many different things.
Yeah, I went down like a really deep dive. It was like
we did a lot of
equestrian
research.
therapy and art therapy.
Yeah.
And all these various different types of therapies.
Yeah. Now we've kind of like, I guess,
honed in a bit.
Yeah, honed into the TMS and Spravato and whatnot. But I think that all these treatments are really cool too.
Yeah.
So that's how we met Tessa.
Hey, Tessa.
Hey.
She was working at Therabody.
It was a great time in our life.
Yeah.
But we've come full circle, and now she's our substitute teacher for Break the Cycle Podcast.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Woo!
So today we're talking about the black sheep of the family. So as we were kind of like prepping for this episode, the first question came to my mind, like, what animal resembles your mental health most? So I would ask that to you, Tessa. What animal resembles your mental health most?
I would say a chameleon, because I am
good answer.
always adapting to my surroundings. I've moved a lot throughout my life. I was like born in Saudi, lived in New Jersey for 10 years, then moved to Houston, lived there for like another 10 years, and now I'm here in California. So I'm constantly in new environments, and I don't know if it's a survival mechanism or what, but you're definitely adapting to your surroundings. So I'm definitely a chameleon.
Super fascinating. Growing up in Saudi, or being born and raised in Saudi, and then coming to Jersey, you must have had to have really changed your skin a few times.
Yeah, it was almost like, you're, I don't want to say living a double life, but you kind of are living a double life. At home, it was a little bit more traditional. And then obviously being in a Western country, you go to school and there's like just different pop culture references that I would like, have to adapt to. Music, I would have to learn. And yeah, it was a fun journey.
Do you remember like a distinct moment, like culturally, where you were like, what the fuck are these kids doing? Like, was it like T-Pain?
Gangnam Style, you're like, get me the fuck out.
I think it was more when I moved to Houston, because I like had no idea, like I wasn't very familiar with Southern culture or Southern music. And the East Coast is very, you're from the East Coast. It's a little bit more like direct, and maybe a little bit, some people may say rude, compared to like Southern hospitality. So like I remember when I was in 6th grade, I moved to Houston, and everybody was like referring to teachers as like, yes ma'am, no ma'am, and I was like, what? Like this is like so different. But it was deemed as like disrespectful if you didn't. So I was like, okay, I have to say yes ma'am, no ma'am, and
adapt a bit,
be a little bit nicer, I think. Yeah.
Okay,
That's cool.
we love a chameleon.
Yeah. What about you guys?
Danny, what do you think?
If I had to put an animal towards my mental health, I would say it would be a killer whale or an orca, because I feel like if I'm isolated, I'll smash my head into the glass tank, which is like the analogous to just sometimes hitting my head against the wall of life if I feel alone. You know how they do that, the killer whales?
I think so. I think I've seen a video.
If they like get like isolated, or if they're like in like the swimming tank at SeaWorld, you know, and they're just like, screw this.
They're going wild.
And they're like trying to like jump out of the tank and shit. Yeah. So I would say killer whale is what I vibrate with.
Outside of trying to ram your head through things, what other ways do you get connected to a whale?
I think killer whales are also like really compassionate towards their friends and their family. So I feel like that checks out. And then they also can get kind of aggressive. And I feel like as a Scorpio, man, sometimes I just flip a switch and I get kind of heated. So yeah, that's what I would say is a killer whale.
Okay, interesting. Got layers here on this animal.
What about you?
The animal that resembles my mental health most, I would say, is probably some type of bird. I like to fly in a flock, I would say. So big flock leader.
But some birds don't fly in flocks.
Yeah, I'm a flocky bird.
Okay.
like the Mighty
geese.
Ducks.
Okay.
Yeah, or the geese.
Geese.
I watched that Wild Robot movie. Down bad after that, crying in the theater.
How did you jump there? Was there a goose in that movie or
Yeah,
something?
yeah.
Okay.
The main character, I believe, is like a goose, and it was raised by a robot that was wild, and the
Don't
bird.
spoil it for me.
Well, it's not really a spoiler.
Okay.
It's
What
pretty.
happens?
And then the mother ends up dying, so the robot has to raise this geese, and it was just like the cutest story. I highly recommend it. Anyways, the bird has to like learn how to basically fly, and then when he starts to fly, he kind of soars. So I would say that I'm connected to the bird because I like to kind of like fly with the pack. I would say I would like to lead a pack due to control issues. But being able to kind of like take people not under my wing, but being able to like fly with a group, I feel like I perform best with like a group mentality. And then I think that the idea of like actually flying away as well at times, kind of just taking flight and doing my own thing and letting the wind carry me for where I want to go. So
Yeah, like you know how like the birds are in that V formation.
Yeah,
when they're
Mighty Ducks.
migrating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like me and you are at the top of the thing, and sometimes you just try to like fly ahead, and you're like, guys, we gotta go this way, and then sometimes we'll just dip out and just go by yourself and just go on a little side quest.
Yeah, you have to side quest it out sometimes.
Yeah.
You have to side quest it out. But we're talking about black sheep. Do you ever feel like you were a black sheep or are a black sheep? And I think it would probably be best to define like what a black sheep is. The family member who feels misunderstood, out of place, or at odds with family dynamics. While the term quote unquote like black sheep isn't a clinical term that you could find in the DSM or like in a textbook, patients and people in clinical settings really identify with this word. There's a little bit of history into the word and we can kind of get into it, but I view the black sheep in one of two different ways. One is a black sheep in a group of people like their own distinct person that maybe some people like pick on or like are they the outsiders, almost like an ugly duckling. But I also view the black sheep as someone who is almost like a cycle breaker. So they're like choosing their own path. So like willingness to be the black sheep or choosing to be the black sheep, if that makes sense. Like are you predisposed to being black sheep or did you choose a different path and inevitably leading your color changing from white to black?
Like nature versus nurture.
Yeah, maybe. What do you think, Tessa?
As far as like my own experience with black sheep.
Yeah, black sheep being chosen or black sheep like presenting themselves.
Yeah, I think it could go both ways, right? Like I think that sometimes your life choices deem you as the black sheep or the way that you just, your personality since a child has you becoming a black sheep or labeled as a black sheep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the real pulp of the question is whether or not people are like born different or if they just act differently and then become different. And I would say that like genetically, obviously, when two people decide to have a family, they all have the same genetic predisposition for the most part, right? But I think the variation ultimately comes in terms of how they perceive their reality and the moral or the value systems of their family unit. And I think a lot of it has to do with like whether or not they are in alignment with their religion, with their cultural perspectives, right? And I think a lot of that isn't something per se that you're born with, but rather you come to on your own volition, right? Because you can see within an internal family unit such a wide spectrum of different value systems within siblings even, right?
Yeah, I would say like I'm one of 5, I'm the youngest, and in nurture versus nature, like nurture, I would consider myself a black sheep where I like went out and chose to like break certain patterns and chose that. But I also feel like the middle child, my brother, also is a black sheep in a sense where whether it's chosen or not, he was kind of just like a little bit more sensitive and maybe like cast blame in certain family dynamics as well. So I think in a like nurture or nature way, he was the one that was like the black sheep. So it's almost like kind of seeing both of those two different dispositions.
Yeah, being able to see it in two different lenses is important for sure. And yeah, I think the same thing in my family. Like I would say in terms of the nature of my siblings, my sister is probably the most black sheep. She's very like headstrong, and she's the first one to move out of Utah and to break out of the Mormon religion my family was raised in, and to kind of disrupt a lot of the paradigms that our family kind of predisposed. But then in terms of like a nature component, or a nurture component rather, I think I was inspired by that, but for my sister, and then I ended up following in a lot of those and kind of hybridizing it into my own sort of modus operandi, and have become a black sheep as well. But I'd say me and her are probably the two black sheep of the family, really.
Interesting. What about you, Tessa? Do you identify as a black sheep?
I do identify as a black sheep.
Ooh, tell me why.
I'm also youngest of 6.
Whoa, big youngest squad here.
Yeah, we're all the youngest. Wow, I didn't know that.
And 4, 5, 6. Danny has 4 siblings. I have 5.
I have 3 siblings, 4 total, yeah.
4 total. Sorry, that's what I meant. 4 siblings on my end, so 5 total, and then 6 total for you.
Yeah, I think I chose a little bit of a non-traditional life path, but also I was the only one out of my siblings that fully grew up in a Western country. So,
whoa, tell me more about that.
Meaning all of my siblings grew up in like the Middle East for the most part, and I was the only one that from elementary school onward lived in the US. So I feel like I was just exposed to a lot of different things.
Yeah. That is wild. Do you feel like there's many different separations in between your siblings and you from like a cultural standpoint? Because I feel like you'd almost I would say that that's more nurture because like of just where you were born, your family moving.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm definitely a little bit more liberal compared to my siblings. I still have share the same values to an extent, but I definitely question things a little bit more because I'm just exposed to a lot of different things that they may have not been exposed to. And yeah, so.
Interesting. The idea just came to my head on, do you think because we're all the youngest and you're 30, 28, 26, I would consider us Gen Z. You're like on the cusp maybe?
Yikes.
No?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think I'm a millennial.
Millennial? Anyways,
so.
Do you think that it's because you were born in the age of the internet, right? I mean, we were almost on this cusp. Do you think that there's an age gap? I mean, Danny,
98, yeah.
Yeah, is a little bit, right? He's only a year older than you. Your brother.
He's like 6 years older.
No, Chris.
Oh yeah, he's your age, 28.
Yeah, so he's a few years older. My sibling is a few years old, 31. But like, I wonder if there's also that like gap that comes in with like being the youngest, or like literally just being exposed to like more things online.
Yeah, I mean, you may just see how like certain examples with your siblings and experiences that they have, and that may shape who you then become because you're learning from maybe their mistakes or their experiences. Instead of rather than being an older person or the older sibling where you don't really have that, you don't have someone that you can look up to, or you don't have other examples that, other than your parents that you're kind of referring to.
Yeah. Yeah. So being the youngest, you're just naturally disposed, have the disposition of seeing almost all these pathways. I feel the same way with my siblings.
Yeah. I'm
like, all of them have their own like paths that they chose, and I'm like, okay, let's take some notes from this one. That one didn't do too well. Okay, cool. Let's summarize, and then we'll be like, that's the plan.
Yeah.
That's how I operated.
Yeah, and I think as I get older, I'm definitely cultivating like a deep respect for my older siblings because I feel like they kind of paved the way.
Yeah,
and like
for sure.
like,
they stepped in dog shit.
Yeah, and I mean, big life hack: be the youngest in your family.
Choose your birth order.
You get away with a lot more.
Yeah,
I mean that, and then also you got to
much.
just see where they went left instead of right, and you can see what's worth it while investing in and pursuing, and what maybe you can conserve your energy for, so that's a huge point.
Yeah, and I think another point with the black sheep is there's a resilience connotated to it, right? Because you're constantly trying to forge new pathways, so you have to be okay with getting knocked down. You have to be okay with when paving, you're going to run into maybe a pebble that's going to fly and hit you in the face or something. Because continuing to push new boundaries is difficult. It's exhausting, but the more you push and the more you get pulled, the stronger you inevitably become, and you could withstand more.
Yeah.
I think to an extent, right? And that's kind of what I'm going through right now. It's like, at which point does that stress or that pressure or that adversity end up actually lowering your XP, if you will, like your health, you know, instead of like building onto it, right? Because there is a degree of like, yeah, it develops a callus and your capacity to transcend adversity is increased for sure. But then also it can compromise your health too and kick you down, you know? So it's like glorifying adversity as well.
Yeah, but that's part of adversity. Is you have to almost
accept it,
be down bad to get yourself back up. Like that's part of it. Like you're getting stretched, although exhausting at times, right? And although lonely, extremely lonely, that's like part of the process. Where you almost are exhausted, and then you realize, oh damn, I can dig deeper. I have more in the tank. Like I have what it takes to actually like break this cycle or kind of be this black sheep.
Yeah, and I think finding that is the difficult part of being the black sheep and paving a new path, you know, finding that hope and like that emptiness in the tank and being able to dig deeper. How do you do that?
How do you do that, Tessa?
A lot of therapy.
Hundreds and thousands of dollars of speaking to a human.
No, but I think also like you end up finding other networks, and you know, like for me, like even though I may not have related to my siblings in certain ways, I had friends that I was like super close to, and you know, we shared experiences with one another, and you know, they may understand things that my siblings wouldn't understand. So you do build new networks and new connections when you are facing that adversity.
Yeah, and I think there's also, with being a black sheep, you have to go through like a dark night of the soul. Basically you go through like loneliness and isolation is like such a huge part of like breaking through and being that black sheep. And you go through that isolation, and it is hard, it is difficult, but you have to look in the mirror and you have to show up and be like, I need to choose a different path. I know the path that I'm on right now, or I've seen, is necessarily unhealthy. How do I create that new path? And you almost have to deviate and be alone to start to really reflect. And as you kind of come through on the other side, or like hit that tipping point, you're like start to cultivate a sense in a group of people that also align with you.
For sure.
They kind of just like come to you like moths come to light.
Yeah, I recently heard of this concept where whenever like someone is really trying to break free from their, I guess, baseline mediocrity, as in like if they were to just, you know, go get the 9-to-5, live like, you know, in their hometown and just not really exceed and like really strive for their ultimate potential, there's this gap in them being trying to progress outside of their network of existing friends and try to be better and like improve themselves, but not quite being developed yet enough to have a new group of friends. And there's this like period of isolation that you have to endure, that I've heard multiple like really successful people talk about. And I think it's just a matter of continuing to stay persistent and investing in yourself and having that confidence that ultimately you'll cross the bridge, you know, to the other side. But it's, I think, inevitable for everyone to have to endure that in some capacity, you know, that's striving to be their best selves and reach their potential.
Do you feel like, since all of us have moved away from home, do you feel like that played a very big part in like your comfort and who you've become as a black sheep?
Yeah, I think that was a really pivotal point for sure. I think me personally, so I mentioned that I have 4 other siblings, but they're all half siblings. So they come from a different father, and then I have my father. And I feel like the black sheep for me started to like materialize when they would go with their father and had a very different experience than I had with my father. Just like really bad addiction, drinking. So like at a really young age, they would basically go have each other. And then I would like kind of break off and just be solo and have to like go through this like landmine. And I picked up a lot of these skills, one of them being a chameleon. And I talked about it in past episodes, but that was like the break off of the black sheep per se. And once that kind of, I made that connection in my mind, I was like, I need to get the fuck out of here. So as soon as I turned 18, the plan was like, how far can I go? And I was in Connecticut, so I was on the East Coast. I was like, let me literally run as far as I can. And I ran into the Pacific Ocean in California. And then at that point, I started to notice these unhealthy habits that were born out of like survival in a sense. So then that's really where like, not even the dark soul of the night, because I had a lot of people around me, but I just had to start to realize, these tools that you may have picked up aren't super helpful and healthy. You need to carve your own path.
And how long do you think that took you when you moved out here to California to cultivate that community and like bypass that period of isolation in terms of like being able to express yourself authentically?
So when I got here, I met rejection like relatively quickly.
Yeah, with the frat.
So I was like searching for masks and I found the best one and I threw it on my face.
Which one was that?
That was like the gay promoter, just like extremely flamboyant. Oh my God, hey, you're so cute. Please accept me because I'm lonely and literally halfway across the world from my family. And they were like, we love you. And I'm like, you love that mask, you do. So I just masked the fuck up, and it worked. I mean, I really like went from like no friends to like being very well known within a small school. So it was more of me just being like, please validate me. But that validation led me to creating a person or narrative that a lot of people knew that like as years went on, I felt further and further away from that individual because it was an essence of me, but it was a played part in character. So once I like kind of built up this armor, kind of built up this mask, and then it was exhausted at playing a part day in and day out, I was like, I gotta put this shit down. And then that's really where like it kind of took like my loneliness era where I was just by myself and I was like, who are you? How do you want to show up? Like outside of all these other pieces and components, like what does that necessarily look like? So I think that black sheep, from like identifying it and then going away, as you mentioned, Tessa, to college, to then me aligning with my authentic self, like that's the 20s. And now being 28 and being on my later phases of the 20s, I'm feeling more confident in who I am. And also it took like 8 years or 10 years to like look at these tools and be like, fuck, I'm a chameleon and I saw my mother manipulate people. I gotta like drop these fucking tools. And I have to be the black sheep in the way of, you need to break these cycles. You need to show up in a different way and you need to show up day in and day out. And you almost need to parent yourself. So 10 years. It took me 10 years since.
It sounds like you had like a couple of phases, right?
Yeah.
When you initially went out there, then you were like trying on the masks. You found a mask that worked, and then that mask got really, you got tired of having to put that on. And then you had another kind of second phase, like shedding of the skin, if you will. And now you're really stepping into like more of an authentic expression and cultivating that tribe, I think, over the past couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's part of the black sheep, or maybe like the black snake.
You have to shed layers. Yeah, I think like I'm just coming into it. I mean, I just turned 26. I've been in LA this time for about 8 months, and I feel like just over the past month or two, I'm really feeling like this is, I can like start to call this place like not home quite like per se, but just like feeling more grounded. Yeah, feeling like I have a sense of community. So it takes time for sure.
So you're a bit still in your loneliness era.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just transitioning out of it, quite frankly. But it's been. Yeah, I think it's solid 2 or 3 years. Because similar to you, I mean, it was a different mask, but I wore the mask of like, I was doing like a lot of crypto trading and like online business, and kind of wore that mask of like the online entrepreneur, like athletic sort of travel, festival kid, You
love an Instagram story, don't you?
Yeah. And just like, going to like clubs and traveling and trading crypto and just living that digital nomad life. And so I wore that mask like throughout college. And then once that got old, I had to let go of it. And I think for the past 2 or 3 years, stepping into more of an authentic expression of who I am and what I want to resemble and bring to the world is, definitely it's been difficult, but rewarding at the same time,
For sure.
What about you, Tessa? How long did your black sheep era last? And
you were in Houston for a little bit and then you moved out to California.
I was in Houston for a little bit. I actually, my freshman year of college, I went to LSU. So that was as far as I was allowed to go from my family. But, it was still like close enough to where they were accepting of it.
How far is LSU from Houston?
It was about like 4-hour drive.
Okay.
Not like crazy far, but it was like very taboo for me to like leave Houston to go to college as like a girl culturally. So that was, I think, the time where I was really, I had a lot of time to self-reflect and really be able to make friends and socialize and, do things that I maybe wanted to do before and I wasn't allowed to because I was just in a little bit of a more stricter household. But yeah, it was definitely a little bit lonely. But I came out of it pretty strong. And I think it really helped mold me into who I am today.
So do you feel like it was you going away to LSU and then that experience like freshman year? Or was that like the catalyst and then coming to California that also kind of played in part?
I think it was like the catalyst. I, transferred schools, but I still didn't move back to Houston. And, during that time, I really had like a lot of independence and I was able to make mistakes if I, made mistakes. And I came back home to my apartment and I didn't have to like worry about any judgment from anybody else. So it was just kind of like trial and error, figuring out what I wanted to do. And, making friends along the way. And now, I mean, I'm married now, which is why I came out here, but it was its own little phase, I think.
Yeah. And I think that you touched upon a really key point, judgment. I think becoming a black sheep, you have to look at that judgment and not let it affect you. And a lot of people deal with judgment differently. Do you feel like there was a moment where you faced that judgment maybe from like family and you were like, I'm going to try to silence this? Or how did you kind of deal with that judgment being the black sheep?
I think I was just a little bit avoidant. I, didn't really want to go to maybe certain events or like whatever where I just felt uncomfortable. I just like really was protective about my energy and like who I wanted to be around. And, if someone had like something weird to say, I would kind of just be like, all right, I'm never coming to this event again. Like, don't want to be around this person anymore. So yeah.
Interesting. And did you ever feel like this, because coming from like a multicultural background and like almost like going home and almost being one version versus coming like being out, being a different in a sense, do you feel like there was like dissonance that was happening, i.e. you were like living one life when at LSU or these other schools versus being back at home?
Yeah, I think I was just able to be more comfortable in like who I was and like not be so worried and so nervous about what anybody else is going to say, because I still like deep down inside don't want to like disappoint my family, right? So it's like, okay, I'll come home and like I won't hang out with my friends, I'll just like kind of be at home, I won't really like stir anything up or whatever, and I'll just be like chill, I'll be on like the lay low and whatever. And whenever I'm like back in whatever city I'm living in, I'm like, okay, I'm myself now, I can like breathe, I don't have to like wear this mask that you were talking about. Yeah.
Fascinating. See, when I go home, I feel like I'm a disruptor.
Ooh.
Where I'm like, as the black sheep and doing all this work, I'm like, bro, I had to pick up these tools because of this unit. And now I've like successfully dropped them or maybe changed them in a way that like maybe once were negative and now positive. And now I'm like, not that I'm going to like big dick my healing journey, but I'm going to be like, yo, you're still kind of fucking up and being manipulative. Like, I'm not going to like stand for that.
Yeah.
And instead of being like more dismissive or like be more coy about it, I'm like, yeah, that's just like not okay. Like we're gonna say a hard no here. And I'm a bit aggressive with it. And I think I'm still, obviously healing takes time and it's a journey. But I'm at that point now still where when I do go back, sometimes I get a bit spicy.
Yeah. I think that's also because of the culture there too, though. It's like that's the only way that it'd be received, whereas maybe like when I go back home, if I'm trying to like break a cycle, quote unquote, I can kind of just like be a bit more coy with it per se, if that makes sense. Whereas like the only way I feel like you get through to the East Coasters is you have to be like, yo, what the and like flip a table,
Absolutely.
You have to like
make sure you're running your fucking mouth. You want to keep running your fucking mouth? I love this fucking game.
Exactly. Instead I can be like, guys, I don't know if we should, continue down this path.
Mom, what the fuck are you talking about? So funny. Yeah, even at work, like sometimes we talk to clients, Danny and I on the East Coast, and he'll call like the East Coasters like the mental health mafia, And I'm like, that's family right there. I'm like, that's family.
Yeah, I just love their accents. It's like in a sitcom. It's like Big Steve and Uncle Marty, like what the hell? They're all wearing baseball caps. It's hilarious.
Yeah, it's a different vibe for sure. But yeah, being the black sheep at times could be really difficult. It also could be extremely rewarding. Like as cycle breakers, I feel like you are literally paving a new path. So you in itself have to be a black sheep. Like I feel like a cycle breaker and a black sheep is one and the same, how I view it. But it was interesting because I was talking to my grandmother on the way in, Grammy, shout out Grammy. And she was like, I don't really consider that a black sheep, like a cycle breaker. And I was like, interesting. She's like in her 70s. So she's like, what do you consider like a black sheep? And her like thought of a black sheep was more of like the like one that kind of sticks out in the family. So like the nurture versus nature, like the almost like the odd one out, like the ugly duckling in a way. Where I feel like my viewpoint of a cycle breaker of a black sheep is a cycle breaker. Someone that's carving their own pathways and is kind of deviating from the traditional path. So do you see it as like almost like a black sheep as an ugly duckling or as a cycle breaker?
That's a good question. I think both, quite frankly. I think the black sheep, like, for example, my cousin is the only gay sibling out of 4, and his parents are the presidents of, like, the Mormon temple in Brazil, right? And so he's, like, obviously the black sheep, per se.
Well,
right?
We call that the rainbow sheep.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But so in that case, like, I think he's the black sheep in a lot of regards, but he's also, like, breaking cycles too in some context, and then his siblings too. I feel like every generation is constantly trying to evolve on the past one. But yeah, I would say it's both. What do you think, Tessa?
Tessa, you don't give ugly duckling vibes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's maybe subjective. I don't know. I mean, when you think of like people that are extremely successful or like musicians or something, they're usually like the black sheep, right? But is that always like a negative thing? Like they're, is it based on like someone's success and how they end up being? Like, does that deem someone as like the ugly duckling versus like how you would portray like a black sheep? I don't know.
Yeah, I think a black sheep is like someone who's simply like breaking cycles, but it could be a cycle of like a cultural cycle, it could be a financial cycle, it could be an emotional cycle, right? And so just like standing out and like breaking off of the pack is really what I think ultimately a black sheep is in whatever context that may be.
Yeah, because it could be negative or positive.
Exactly.
Right? Like my father could be considered a black sheep because he chose alcohol to cope with his shit, and that would be like a black sheep. Like he's deviating from like behavior. Or I guess they were all kind of alcoholics, but
yeah,
just like, do you know what I mean? Like someone, like a drug user, that you're like, that fucker's a black sheep over there, but you're not like, that's a cycle breaker, like you're like, that's a cycle starter, like
exactly.
So it's interesting, this term of black sheep could be
it's just like behaving differently than your family unit.
Yeah.
That's ultimately what it is. Because like even if you're gay and everyone else in your family is straight, it's like there's nothing, it's like a neutral thing, right? It's not like good or bad, it just is, right? But it's different ultimately, which is why you stand out, and which is why you might be regarded as the black sheep, because it's different. So I think that's like ultimately, in order to be the black sheep, you have to have the confidence in yourself to be able to stand out, like you were saying, the confidence to endure judgment from the people you love the most.
Yeah.
Right? In whatever context that is.
Yeah. Or if you are the black sheep and you are so different, like rocking in that difference as well. And just rocking in your vibe and energy. Because I think on the other end, you could be the black sheep where you're just like different and like being, let's say gay, for example, right? Or like just operating different from a family unit or friend unit or whatever. And then you could be like quite self-conscious about that. You're like, fuck, I'm different. You know what I mean? But it's like, I think now it's 2024. People are like rocking your fucking difference. Like you do you. Like whatever that is, whatever you feel, like express it to the best of your ability. And if it's not affecting anyone and it's your truest essence of yourself, like be that black sheep. Like fucking be it.
Yeah. And I think when you shine the brightest is when you can like relinquish the judgment that you have for yourself.
Ooh.
Ultimately, not like even disregarding the judgment that your loved ones have of you is one thing, but disregarding the judgment you have of yourself is really where you can be like empowered, and you can step into that brilliance and take quantum leaps towards your ultimate potential.
Yeah, towards your journey. And yeah, I think the judgment thing is we've been talking this whole time about judgment of others, but also judgment of yourself and expectations that others have placed on you, and being like, am I living up to like their narrative or their story? Like, kind of brings back to the new generational wealth. Like, am I a failure because I'm not a doctor or lawyer or something like that? And then you just putting this pressure on yourself versus releasing that pressure and being like, I want to be an artist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's been my biggest hurdle personally.
In what way?
Getting over the judgment I have of myself.
Ooh,
I think
okay.
a part of me is still holds on, or like my 17-year-old self that had that kind of mask of like, oh, I'm going to be the digital nomad, crypto millionaire, sort of like, you know, world traveler, what have you. And I just think at my mid-20s, I wanted to be like further along, whatever that meant, and like financially or in terms of my social status, etc. And so there's this inner voice that's like critiquing where I'm at, but it's like it serves no purpose whatsoever. You know what I mean? Being able to absolve yourself of that inner voice and being able to just show up authentically and do your best is ultimately what will, you know, help you achieve that full potential.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're siphoning your gas.
Exactly.
And like flying outside. And you're like, bro, you're bleeding on the streets.
Yeah, and you're the one who's causing it, you know? That's the difficult part. So breaking that cycle internally, it's not even like a family cycle as much as it is just your own internal critic.
Yeah, and almost like allowing yourself to be the black sheep and not having to compare to like all these other people, especially online. It's fucking horrible. You know what I mean? People in Miami driving Lambos. I can't imagine what your For You page looks like.
20-year-old. Exactly.
You know what I mean? They're like,
20-year-olds.
look at my Shopify. You know, and Danny's like, damn. You know, the guy's actually just doing like fucking ketamine and cocaine in the bathroom. Absolutely horrible, more depressed than ever, and is about to Liam Payne himself. You know.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like it's not always, the glitter is not always gold. You know, but that's been my biggest hurdle in terms of just breaking free from judgment.
For sure. Do you have any judgments of yourself, Tessa, or like how did you work through that coming into being your own black sheep?
Yeah, I think I had to really understand that like I wasn't a bad person. I think I had this like narrative that like maybe because I thought of things a little bit differently or I went about things a little bit differently than my family did, that like that meant I was like inherently like a bad person.
Right.
So really just like understanding that, yeah, I'm a little bit different, but that's okay. It doesn't mean I'm like a shitty person. You know, I am who I am. I'm a little bit different. And I think that's like a really beautiful gift that I have, that I'm able to have a different outlook on life and, you know, maybe empathize with people a little bit differently as well.
For sure. Were there times where you thought you were a shitty person? Not just in general, but like, how shitty are you? But you know what I mean? Like, how did you, because I feel like you take me as the personality that is like a little bit more self-conscious in a way that, and correct me if I'm wrong, my cousin is similar, where like the expectations of others or even being able to like ensure that like people view you in a certain light, especially the family unit, like that is highly important, and being able to almost deviate from that narrative sometimes can be difficult. And instead of like looking at the situation being like, this is my situation, rather maybe I'm not living up to this idea of maybe my parents or my family unit. Do you kind of align with that?
Somewhat. I mean, I think that it just like took a lot of me having to remove myself from that family unit and really like look at who I am like to the core, like as a person, how I interact with people, what my goals are, what my dreams are, and, you know, like, am I going about it the right way versus like, am I, you know, just doing it because I want to be rebellious, you know, like, is there meaning behind what I'm doing, or am I just like trying to go against the grain just to like piss people off?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
There was a lot of that when I was growing up because of the Mormon religion. I feel like myself, as well as a lot of my friends, were just, smoking weed or partying or just being stupid, drifting cars and whatnot, just to break the rules,
Yeah.
Because I feel like, especially when there's more of a conservative container for your family unit, like there's almost this innate human inclination to want to break the rules
For sure.
and break free and be liberated. And that goes back to the killer whale. It's like I just want to get out of the glass cage and just like hit my head against it and jump over into the
I think when you're talking about balance, you have to overextend to then come back. So that overextension, maybe that rebellious phase where you're just like, I'm trying to find who I am.
Yeah.
So you're gonna like overact or overcorrect that behavior versus being your truest self. But I think finding that, you have to almost like taste the flavors and go everywhere on that chart and then be like, all right, I'm centered. This is who I am.
Yeah. Like, that stove is hot. All right, won't touch that again.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that the idea of being a black sheep and being a cycle breaker is one and the same, but also quite different at times as well. I think the one thing that people, I guess I wish I told myself, was embracing the power of the black sheep. And the person that is a black sheep is also like the person that's pushing change, is the truth teller, is the healer, and being able to be like proud of yourself and like give a little pat on the back, being like, I'm thinking differently. That's all like really important things, especially, which is the majority of our listeners right now, like in your 20s, 30s, early 30s, like making those questions, like doing kind of the due diligence. And this could happen, I mean, at any time in your life, of course, but I feel like the earlier that you could start to ask these questions and start to like break these cycles, or to get more comfortable like in your sheepskin that is black, and be like, yeah, I'm cool with this, embrace your weirdness or your difference, or embrace that you think about things differently, especially as we're going into the holiday season. This episode's going to be in December. That you usually see more of a contrast when it comes to like your black wool versus you going back to maybe a lot of white wool around you.
Yeah, the contrast is more pronounced, definitely, when you're in it, during the holidays, for sure. And I think just, again, dismantling that inner critic and that inner judge, and being confident and secure in your decisions, even though you might not know exactly how everything's going to pan out, and you've taken some big risks, and you're still trying your best to start that company or work, get that new job or move to that new city, whatever it may be. Just moving forward day by day, one foot in front of the other, with trust and faith in yourself and a higher power.
Yeah, and like your chosen family as well. Like you get to choose the people around you. So choose people that are also.
Yeah, and to that point, there's a few different strategies for resilience here. The first one being seeking support from communication networks. So leaning on specific social networks, members for emotional support. I think that's super important.
You got to celebrate your individuality.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, find the people that make you feel like you aren't a black sheep, even though you think differently.
Yeah.
That's really important. I think that I've tried to cultivate that. And there's also like different parts of your uniqueness as well, like as a cycle breaker, and maybe having like different people that highlight those different parts of you. Like you're always multifaceted. So being able to have a community of people that like see all these different facets of you, whether, it's like more of your artsy or creative side or fashion, versus like you being able to like trauma dump with a friend and they just like giggle at you, being like, LOL, like you went through that, and having that lightness as well, versus, maybe another friend where you express yourself differently. But being able to have that chosen family, I think, helps as a black sheep.
100%.
Forgive yourself for not fitting in and not fitting the mold.
Yeah, we don't like molds.
Yuck. Hate mold, especially black mold and green mold, all the mold. But yeah, you're not just fitting the mold. We're all different. And I think, in the age of like social media nowadays and like Gen Z, it's like now more than ever, you could totally just rock in your own energy.
Yeah.
you like have full ability to just like be you. We got like Zayzems rolling around, you know what I mean? You could color your hair any goddamn color in the rainbow and just be still rocking. And it's like normal nowadays. Like imagine that shit in the 1960s.
Yeah, it would be insane.
You know what I mean? Like there's any day is today to be that black sheep and just to rock in your own flow and energy.
Yeah.
And also with social media too, you could find other sheep.
Yeah, I think that's like a very big thing, is like social media played a very big part in me like finding my group and like seeing other people, whether it's like on blogs that I can relate to a little bit more, and you know, finding that that network is like really important.
For sure, yeah. It's interesting how there's obviously like so many negatives to social media, but I feel like there are definitely positives, especially if you are alone and there is so much loneliness tied to like being a black sheep, as we talked about, dark soul of the night. But like you have other people out there that are going through similar journeys. You just have to try to find the way to connect with them, even if it's not like you know them personally. Even hearing other stories, I'm sure like even us expressing these stories, like everyone goes through some type of experience. It may be extremely different, but I think people could align with like, especially if you're trying to break these cycles, or maybe you're estranged from your parents, or maybe you're experiencing anxiety or depression. Like there is someone out there in the world that God is probably feeling the exact same way.
Yeah.
And if you could find someone like that, even if it's just their profile online, and be able to relate to that, realizing like you're not alone.
Yeah, it's not taboo to talk about it anymore.
Yeah,
you can talk about your feelings,
chit chat about your feelings.
Yeah, in fact I feel like you're rewarded for it, you know. A lot of the influencers that I follow, that I'm inspired by, are the ones that are the most vulnerable about their failures and their insecurities, you know. So I feel like that's ultimately what is going to cultivate that connection too, is just being vulnerable about it. And I'm grateful for this podcast to have a channel for me to do that in some capacity. But I think you have to find your own method, you know, whether it's
podcasts.
Start a podcast. You could start like even just on your Instagram, or you know, I think in a digital context it is much easier to do right, at scale.
Close friends on Instagram, great. Honestly, you'd be surprised. Just pop on there with a little video. Although like you could feel quite shy. Snapchat, yo guys, I'm going through this. You'd be surprised how many people respond.
100%.
You know, or going through it that are literally right next to you, but like you being like, I'm weird. This isn't, other people don't go through this. And it's like, no, someone probably that you're actually very close with may be going through a very similar thing, but you literally just like don't know about it because you're not communicating.
Yeah. If there's any regret that I have, it would be being more open about the obstacles that I was enduring while I was enduring them, because I feel like there was a lot of potential support there that was unrealized because I was insecure or like judging myself about it, and I wouldn't open up about it on whether it's social media or just like person to person. But it's almost like that trauma or that adversity is actually has the capacity to be a slingshot if you use it and you yield it, you know, and you're open about it. So if that's you, if you feel like a black sheep right now, like talk to people about it, talk about it, share it, and whoever's meant to connect with it and support you will show up.
Yeah, authenticity breeds authenticity. It's like read a Brene Brown book, but it's like those things like shame and guilt and like all those negative emotions like breed isolation, which breeds just like feelings of like fear and all the negative shit, low vibe and like emotions, versus being able to communicate these things. It's like it's gonna make you feel good. And if you do open up and people aren't responsive, might not be your people, and that's totally okay as well. Like part of this black sheep is like finding your herd, right? So it's like it's not easy finding your herd. It's going to take a good amount of time. But once you do, you're going to be like, damn, I'm rolling with a good herd here. I got a good flock. Got some good geese around me.
Get that geese gang.
Geese gang strong. Closing affirmation, like you might feel like a black sheep now, wherever you are in your black sheep journey. Just know you're building a future for yourself and maybe your offspring, or just maybe the people around you, that will be an environment that will be conducive to healing and authenticity and just being open. And if you didn't have that in your first 18 years or the beginning stages of life, like you could still cultivate that today. You know, it's 2024. Let's get weird. Let's talk about our problems. Let's break those cycles.
Let's build that resiliency.
Pew pew. Yeah, if you're looking for help, or you're the black sheep and you're like, yo, I need some help, I need to go find a therapist, I need to go find someone to help me with my meds, interventional psych, you're dealing with depression, anxiety, PTSD, we are here to help you. We are connected to mental health clinics all throughout the US. We have care and connections in all 50 states. We are trying outside of the United States. India, I see you, I hear you. We're going to try to find someone soon. But if you need help, fill out a form, hit link in bio, give us a call, give us a text. Care coordinators are waiting to speak to you to help you find the treatment that you need. We're here to help you break those cycles. And you guys on Black Sheep, in your corner. Thanks so much for listening.